Do you believe in vengeful spirits? Subscribe to our newsletter for a chance to win exclusive merchandise from the upcoming horror film Munja. We'll be announcing the lucky winner on June 5th at 7 p.m. on Instagram. Don't miss out. Now let me tell you a story. A story about a vengeful spirit. A story about a friendship broken by terror. A story about the Munja. The night was young. The air was thick with the salty tang of the sea. Abhinav and Jai, friends since childhood, were celebrating Jai's birthday on the beach. Laughter echoed around them. The bonfire crackled merrily, casting dancing shadows on their faces.
To Jai, may you always chase your dreams and catch them.
To us, may our friendship last a lifetime.
They clinked their bottles, the sound a cheerful chime in the night. Little did they know a pair of eyes watched them from the shadows, eyes that glowed with a sinister blue light. As the night deepened and the alcohol flowed, Jai grew increasingly bold. He stumbled towards a massive peepal tree at the edge of the beach. Its branches, gnarled and ancient, seemed to reach out like skeletal fingers.
Don't go near that tree, Jai. It's considered sacred.
Jai laughed, his voice slurred.
Scared, Abhinav. Don't be a child.
He grabbed a broken bottle from the sand, its jagged edge glinting in the firelight. With a drunken yell, he carved a deep gash into the tree's bark. A low groan seemed to emanate from the tree. Abhinav watched in horror as a thick black smoke oozed from the wound. It swirled and pulsed, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. Two glowing blue eyes materialized within the smoke. They burned with an ancient rage, an unspeakable fury. Abhinav felt a cold dread grip his heart. But Jai just stood there, his eyes wide with a strange fascination. He seemed mesmerized by the glowing blue orbs. He was frozen in place, unable to heed his friend's warning. S1, Jai, run! The smoky figure shot forward, engulfing Jai in its chilling embrace.
Ah! Cries out in terror and pain.
Abhinav watched in disbelief as his friend thrashed against the smoky tendrils, his struggles growing weaker by the second. The blue eyes bored into Abhinav's very soul. A wave of pure, primal fear washed over him. He knew he had to escape, to run for his life. He scrambled to his feet and sprinted away from the horrifying scene. The image of Jai's terrified face, framed by the glowing blue eyes, seared itself into his memory. Abhinav didn't stop running until he reached the village. His legs burned, and his lungs felt like they were on fire, but he couldn't afford to slow down. Every second counted, and he knew that time was slipping away. He burst into the local police station, gasping for breath, his words tumbling over each other in his haste to explain the horrific events. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he had witnessed, but the urgency in his voice was unmistakable.
You have to help. Please, there's no time to waste. Something terrible. It took Jai. Please, you have to believe me. I saw it with my own eyes. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. We were just walking along the beach when it happened. One moment he was there, and the next, he was gone.
The officers listened patiently, though skepticism lined their faces. They had heard many wild stories before, but something about Abhinav's desperation made them pause. Could there be some truth to his frantic tale? They found it hard to believe the terrified ramblings of a drunk young man. His clothes were disheveled, and his eyes were wide with fear. Yet there was a sincerity in his voice that was hard to ignore. Despite their doubts, they agreed to investigate. They couldn't afford to dismiss any potential threat, no matter how outlandish it seemed. The safety of the villagers was their top priority. Abhinav led them back to the beach, his heart pounding in his chest. The path seemed longer now, each step filled with dread. He couldn't shake the image of Jai's terrified face from his mind. He prayed that they weren't too late, that they could somehow save his friend from the clutches of whatever had taken him. The beach was eerily quiet, the waves lapping gently at the shore, as if mocking the chaos that had unfolded just moments before. Abhinav's eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of his friend, hoping against hope that Jai would appear, safe and sound. The officers spread out, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They called out Jai's name, their voices echoing across the empty beach. Abhinav watched them, his heart in his throat, every second feeling like an eternity. As the minutes ticked by with no sign of Jai, Abhinav felt his hope slipping away. He collapsed onto the sand, overwhelmed with emotion. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered a silent prayer, begging for a miracle. The officers approached him, offering words of comfort and reassurance. They promised to continue the search, determined to find Jai and uncover the truth behind his disappearance. Abhinav nodded, grateful for their support, but the fear in his heart remained. As dawn broke over the beach, the first rays of sunlight brought a glimmer of hope. The search was far from over, and Abhinav knew that he couldn't give up. He had to find Jai, no matter what it took. The race against time continued, and the stakes had never been higher. They arrived at the beach to find the bonfire reduced to smoldering ashes. The once roaring flames that had lit up the night sky were now nothing but a memory, leaving behind a haunting scene of charred wood and dying embers. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt wood, mingling with the salty tang of the sea breeze. The sand was undisturbed, save for Abhinav's frantic footprints. His steps were erratic, weaving a chaotic path across the beach, telling a silent story of panic and desperation. Each footprint seemed to scream out the urgency and fear that had gripped him. There was no sign of Jai. The vast expanse of the beach stretched out, empty and silent under the pale moonlight. The waves lapped gently at the shore, oblivious to the human drama that had unfolded just hours before. No sign of any struggle. The scene was eerily calm, as if the beach itself had swallowed up all evidence of the night's events. It was as if Jai had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind no trace of his existence, no sign of the monstrous figure that had risen from the tree. The memory of that terrifying apparition was still fresh in Abhinav's mind, its grotesque form etched into his consciousness. But now, there was nothing but the silent trees, standing as mute witnesses to the horror. The police officers exchanged skeptical glances. Their faces were masks of disbelief, their eyes filled with doubt. They had seen many things in their line of work, but Abhinav's story seemed too far-fetched, too fantastical to be true. They murmured about the effects of alcohol and overactive imaginations. Their whispers carried a tone of condescension, as if they were dealing with a child who had let his imagination run wild. They were quick to dismiss the possibility of anything supernatural. They clearly didn't believe Abhinav's story. Their skepticism was palpable, a wall of disbelief that Abhinav felt he could never break through. He could see it in their eyes, the way they looked at him as if he were delusional. They were ready to dismiss it as a drunken hallucination. To them, it was just another case of someone seeing things that weren't there, a figment of a mind clouded by alcohol and fear.
No, you have to believe me. Abhinav's voice was filled with desperation, his eyes wide with fear. He was pleading, begging them to understand the gravity of the situation. I know what I saw. His voice trembled with conviction. The image of the monstrous figure was burned into his mind, a nightmare that he couldn't escape. Jai is in terrible danger. The words hung in the air, a chilling reminder of the peril that his friend was in. Abhinav's heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the urgency of his plea.
But Abhinav knew what he had seen. The memory was vivid, a stark contrast to the disbelief of the officers. He could still see the monstrous figure, its eyes glowing with malevolence, its form shrouded in darkness. He knew that Jai was in terrible danger. The fear in his heart was real, a gnawing dread that refused to be silenced. He had to find Jai before it was too late. Desperate for help, Abhinav sought out the village elder, a wizened old man known for his wisdom and knowledge of ancient lore. The old man listened intently to Abhinav's tale, his wrinkled face etched with concern. When he was finished, the old man sighed, a heavy, burdened sound.
You have angered the Munja. It is an ancient spirit, a vengeful entity bound to the people tree. It guards the tree fiercely and punishes those who dare to disrespect it.
Abhinav felt a chill run down his spine.
What will happen to Jai? Is there any way to save him?
The old man shook his head sadly.
The Munja's grip is strong. Its vengeance is swift and merciless, but there might be a way to appease its wrath. We must perform an ancient ritual, a plea for forgiveness.
And so they gathered at the foot of the sacred people tree, the village elder, Abhinav, and a handful of villagers. They brought offerings of flowers, fruits, and incense. The old man chanted ancient verses, his voice echoing in the stillness of the night. Despite their best efforts, the night was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. The air was thick with an unspoken dread, as if the beach itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Jai and Abhinav had come to this secluded spot hoping to find some peace, but instead, they found themselves enveloped in a sense of foreboding that they couldn't shake off. Their pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears. The next morning, Jai's lifeless body was found washed ashore. His eyes, wide and staring, seemed to reflect the horror of his final moments. There was no mark on him, no sign of violence. It was as if the life had been simply drained from him, leaving behind an empty shell. Abhinav was devastated. He blamed himself for Jai's death, for leading them to that cursed beach. The guilt and grief haunted him, casting a long shadow over his life. He swore off alcohol, unable to even look at a bottle without being reminded of that fateful night. And he never went near a peepal tree again, forever haunted by the memory of the glowing blue eyes that had stared out from the darkness, for leading them to that cursed beach. The guilt and grief haunted him, casting a long shadow over his life. He swore off alcohol, unable to even look at a bottle without being reminded of that fateful night. And he never went near a peepal tree again, forever haunted by the memory of the glowing blue eyes that had stared out from the darkness. Abhinav's nights were filled with nightmares, vivid and terrifying. He would wake up in a cold sweat, the image of Jai's lifeless eyes staring back at him, a constant reminder of his failure. He tried to move on, to forget, but the memory clung to him like a shadow, always lurking in the corners of his mind, casting a long shadow over his life. He swore off alcohol, unable to even look at a bottle without being reminded of that fateful night. And he never went near a peepal tree again, forever haunted by the memory of the glowing blue eyes that had stared out from the darkness. The once vibrant and lively Abhinav became a shell of his former self. Friends and family noticed the change, but he could never bring himself to explain the true horror of that night. He became reclusive, avoiding social gatherings and preferring the solitude of his own company. The beach, once a place of solace, had become a symbol of his deepest fears and regrets, unable to even look at a bottle without being reminded of that fateful night. And he never went near a peepal tree again, forever haunted by the memory of the glowing blue eyes that had stared out from the darkness. He would often find himself lost in thought, replaying the events of that night over and over in his mind, searching for answers that would never come. The guilt was a constant companion, whispering in his ear, reminding him of his perceived failure. He sought solace in books and old legends, hoping to find some explanation, some way to make sense of this senseless tragedy. Forever haunted by the memory of the glowing blue eyes that had stared out from the darkness. The glowing blue eyes became a symbol of his torment, a reminder of the unknown forces that had taken his friend. Abhinav's life was forever changed, marked by a night that he could never forget. The beach, the peepal tree, and the glowing blue eyes were etched into his memory, a haunting reminder of a night that had started with hope and ended in despair. Get ready for Munja, a spine-chilling horror film inspired by this legend, hitting theaters next month. Produced by Matic Films, Munja will bring the terror of the vengeful spirit to life on the big screen. Don't forget to participate in our Instagram giveaway on June 5th at 7 p.m. for a chance to win exclusive Munja merchandise. Follow us for more bone-chilling tales and updates on the movie. Are you brave enough to face the Munja?